Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us for Tuesday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Dave Percy, and I'll be hosting the show tonight. Up first is our hazardous weather graphic, and you can see we've got winter storm warnings out here for first, the area shaded in red are winter storm warnings out, and you see Yukon Delta, St. Lawrence Island area, as well as the Seward Peninsula. Those kick in for Wednesday and Wednesday night here for St. Lawrence Island, Bering Strait coast, and the Yukon Delta. And then the northwest coast is from noon Wednesday through Thursday, as well as the western Arctic coast. And in those areas, a couple of storms actually coming up over the next couple of days, one tomorrow and the other one on Thursday. And the one on Thursday is stronger than two. But anyway, that's going to be out for the entire period there for St. Lawrence Island. You're going to get a break in between. We'll look for 3 to 8 inches of snow. Could be mixed precipitation, heavy amounts, and winds with each storm. Probably, especially the one on Thursday, expected to gust 70 miles an hour or greater there for St. Lawrence Island through the Bering Strait coast. And winter weather advisories out here for the North Slope area in the Berks Range for midnight Wednesday through Thursday, again for those incoming storms, some of which will kind of peel off and take a turn to the northeast as they head northward. On satellite imagery today, the weather's contrasted from east to west with the storminess out here over the west in the Bering Sea. High pressure, light winds, and just a few clouds, lots of sunshine over the eastern areas here, and the panhandle from the Yukon. Well in toward the western areas of the state as well. And then in between the two, we have this frontal boundary here from the Chukchi Sea, and it's almost stationary, but not quite. You can see this portion up here is kind of drifting northeastward. This portion down here is edging it, so inching eastward and weakening at the same time. Looks like a wave right in through here. And then we had the main storm roll right up into the Russian Far East. They've been getting quite a few of those pretty potent Bering Sea storms rolling into the south coast up there. And there's going to be some more tracking a little farther to the east here than that one did. But the front weakening pretty rapidly. Not much precipitation during the last 12 hours. Heaviest I could see, or I found, was 2/3 of an inch of water equivalent, Cape Newenham. And then Nome had about 2/10 of an inch, or 15 to 20 hundredths of an inch liquid there on the south coast of the Seward Peninsula. And that was about it. And winds 25 to 40 miles an hour here across the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta area in Nunivak Island, from Bristol Bay actually in that speed, all the way up to the Bering Strait. And winds gusting to 60 miles an hour at Cape Lisburne. But you can see sunshine breaking out here into the Kuskokwim Valley areas up toward Tanana, Galena, and eastward there from Fairbanks on down, North Gulf Coast. And then more clouds up over the upper Yukon Valley. Clear over the Panhandle today, another sunny day. And here's the next storm, already pushing 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts into Adak, with where they've picked up about 2 to 3 inches of snow today. And that's going to continue to develop. It's about 990 millibars right now. And again, the snow and rain, probably trending toward rain once the center pulls a little farther to the north through the central Aleutians, and snow showers back to the west. Very weak trough right through here, brought a few scattered snow showers to the Pribilofs and some rain showers in around Fox Island's Dutch Harbor. Here's that nearly stationary front here that's weakening as it drives into this area, high pressure farther to the east, and southeast flow coming around this high center over the Gulf of Alaska. That's advected some cloudiness and a few scattered showers in across Kodiak Island, somewhat up into Kuskokwim Bay, but really nothing too significant there. Mostly sunny across the southern interior, mostly cloudy to the north, and sunshine eastern North Gulf Coast, or all the North Gulf Coast down across the Panhandle, where you're surrounded by nothing but high pressure. And that's going to continue tonight. We've got a center southeast of Kodiak Island, center up over the south central interior, 3 centers here in the Yukon. So that's going to, again, continue to direct this storm, and it's mostly to the north, but the upper level ridge is gradually shifting eastward, and that's going to allow this very weak boundary to drift inland. And just look for some scattered rain and snow showers Bristol Bay, periods of light rain or showers for the Alaska Peninsula, Bering Seaside into Kodiak, and then snow showers scattered around. They're along this band of moisture there for the on up toward the Noatak Valley, and could be a little more in the way of light snow there in the upslope areas of the Berks Range, and kind of a break coming into St. Lawrence Island tonight ahead of that next storm tracking northward. And then there's yet another one developing on the trailing edge of that front that's south-southwest of Adak. And moving on, and see, tomorrow this thing tracks northward a little bit farther to the east than the one today did, but still to the west, strong southerly winds, snow-blowing snow around St. Lawrence Island into the Yukon Delta, and that's spreading up into the northwest there, Kivalina, Kotzebue, Selawik, up to Point Hope and those areas, and clouds will increase over the western north slope, and really not a lot of precip getting inland at this point in time. High pressure again still centered up over the eastern Brooks Range, keeping it nice and mostly sunny central interior eastward into Canada, southward to the North Gulf Coast, Cook Inlet. We'll have some clouds southwest of Cook Inlet and along the Alaska Range. They'll tend to dissipate tomorrow afternoon, and sunshine and not much in the way of wind for the Panhandle. Taking a look at the outlook for, for Thursday, that next storm takes a very similar path here, driving northward and then starts pulling back to the northwest toward the Russian Far East coast. And again, that's going to lay a front down along the southwest coast, and precipitation is going to have trouble once again pushing inland. In fact, this basically the same frontal boundary as the one that moves up tomorrow is, and they just kind of slide up the frontal boundary there. But this one's going to rotate some rain and maybe 35-mile-an-hour wind gusts into the Alaska Peninsula. Stronger winds, snow and blowing snow from the Yukon Delta northwestward, St. Lawrence Island, south coast of the Seward Peninsula into the Bering Strait tomorrow or Thursday afternoon, with again possible gusts up to 70 miles an hour or more for St. Lawrence Island, and I'd say 40 to 50 miles an hour for the southwest coast, and then maybe 35, possibly 40, say for Cold Bay here for the peninsula. Behind the front, colder temperatures, snowfall levels down to sea level, so snow showers. Winds, though, not too bad, 15 to 25 here over the eastern Aleutians up into the Pueblos, maybe gusts of 30 at St. Paul early on, especially when this low center is closer early in the morning there, and those will be diminishing as it pulls off to the north, and then northwest winds, maybe gusts of 35 out over the western Aleutians with snow showers. Nothing but sun over interior Alaska. Again, from the Arctic coast all the way down to the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound. And then you pick clouds up as you head toward the coastline, of course. Maybe some flurries around the southwest mountains and the Seward Peninsula, but really the precipitation, at least through Thursday, isn't going to get too far inland with this system. And the southeast coast might see an increase in the clouds here. Along the coast, also up toward Yakutat, maybe to Cordova, otherwise not much in the way of any change. Still, light winds, no gradient, some showers lurking just off the coast. And for lows tonight, down that way, 20 to 33 for the lows. Lower 20s, North Gulf Coast. Teens, inland areas, Kenai Peninsula, Cook Inlet, to 5 to 10 up in the Susitna-Matanuska Valley, a little below zero there for the Copper River Basin, 10 to 15 below there up over the eastern interior in areas, otherwise right around zero for the greater Fairbanks area, and either side of zero eastern Arctic coast, warming into the mid-20s on the west side, upper 20s, St. Lawrence Island. And your highs for Wednesday afternoon, 5 to 15 up here in the northeast, with teens eastern Arctic coast near 30 on the west side, lower 30s there for the St. Lawrence Island area, upper 30s in and around Bethel, and lower 40s for the Alaska Peninsula up into Bristol Bay, 46 on Alaska, and in the 40s here for the southeast coast tomorrow, 47 at Sitka. And checking out the lows Thursday morning, again, east side, a little below zero, anywhere from 10 below in the Copper River Basin, same thing up there toward Arctic Village, and near zero on the eastern Arctic coast. Lows of the Panhandle quite varied, upper teens to lower 30s. Lower 30s here along the southwest coast, and mid to upper 30s for the peninsula. And south central Alaska, 5 to 15 for the overnight lows, and those warm to 20s to near 30 or 25 to 30 for Thursday afternoon. Lower teens here in the northeast, near 20 for the Copper River Basin, in the 40s for the Panhandle, in the 40s Bristol Bay and the Alaska Peninsula.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Our first flying weather graphic here for Wednesday morning. Areas of marginal VFR with IFR here from Bristol Bay. Actually around Kodiak Island, right on up to the northwest and then to the north. Banking up along the southern slopes of the western half of the Brooks Range. And then staying off the Arctic coast. So VFR up there, VFR over the eastern interior, right on down to Prince William Sound and on down the southeast coast for tomorrow afternoon. A little bit better here. This is sort of dissipating out here over the interior, but well, nothing but VFR from the north slope down in the eastern interior over to the Kuskokwim Valley, Copper River Basin, North Gulf Coast, right on down the Panhandle, continuing VFR. Got some IFR here over the southwest mountains. Some marginal stuff around Kodiak, and then still a narrow band of IFR along the south side of the Brooks Range, and also from the Chukchi Sea, IFR extending all the way down to the central Aleutians. And for Thursday morning, still got some IFR in areas south side of the Brooks Range, and good VFR though for the Tanana Valley westward there into the looks like just about the Koyukuk Valley and Kotzebue, Selawik, and those areas. Also along the southwest coast, looking pretty good. South central Alaska, no change into the Panhandle. And then some IFR here, St. Lawrence Island southward. But you can see the Aleutians, lots of VFR. And then for Thursday, nothing but VFR here for the Aleutians into the Bering Sea. All there is just this narrow band of IFR right along the Yukon Delta coast of Nunivak Island up over St. Lawrence Island. Very little marginal VFR even over the west and southwest interior areas. So we're looking at a pretty good day on Thursday here, Thursday afternoon. VFR, North Gulf Coast, Cook Inlet, northwest all the way to the Arctic and down the Panhandle. Passes Anaktuvik, VFR could become IFR in the afternoon. Some moisture slipping in from the west. I think Gadigan will be too far east to get in on that, but they may go marginal in the afternoon. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR early, possibly becoming VFR. And rainy, VFR. Chalk up another VFR day for Windy and Isabel as well. As Mintasta, VFR. Tanita, same forecast. Portage also VFR, and Chilkoot and White continuing VFR. And for the freezing levels here, warm air aloft here right over the northeast Gulf and or the eastern Gulf and eastern Gulf Coast there, right up the border, about 2,000 feet, all the way up to the eastern Arctic coast. And then we've got 2,000 to 4,000 feet here over the east central Aleutians. Taking a look at icing with the south to north flow, and then these fronts coming in as they come into the interior, they dissipate. Here's the next one. They'll be doing the same thing, but for tomorrow afternoon, we'll look at areas of considerable moderate riding northeast here on that strong south and southwest jet. In across the central Aleutians, kind of edging over toward the Yukon Delta coast of Nunivak Island, and then up from the Bering Strait into the Chukchi Sea. But you can see it's off the northwest coast there and just catching the western Seward Peninsula. So icing free over much of the mainland, Bristol Bay areas, Gulf of Alaska, no icing on down to the Panhandle. Jet stream, upper level ridging right through here from the Gulf or Northeast Pacific up into the southeast interior, but ridging up to the eastern Arctic coast. And we've got this one jet, or if you can call it that, 50 to 60 knots into the interior, and then the stronger one back out there to the west, and northeast flow coming down across Dixon Entrance. And at 9,000 feet, big storm coming northward to the Aleutians, one already up towards St. Lawrence Island, and strong winds here with this one coming up between the gradient of the high and that low. 45 to as high as 80 knots, north 65 knots is Nunivak Island, pretty strong winds right up the west side there. Same thing at 3,000 feet, southerly winds 40 to 75 knots and then 55 to 60 knots on up to the north. Turbulence-wise, A lot of moderate chop here expected from the northwest coast, about Point Lay, right on down across the Yukon Delta, possibly the Kuskokwim River and Nunivak Island. That's with the first storm slipping on up to the north there. And the next storm coming up, another round of widespread turbulence, moderate turbulence, below 6,000 feet. Actually could be some isolated severe, especially for smaller aircraft here from Atka in across the Alaska Peninsula with this next system, but it drops off dramatically here as you head east.
Thanks for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider, and joining us today is Eric Stevens from GINA, the Geographic Information Network of Alaska at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. Thank you for joining us, Eric.
My pleasure, Dave.
Thank you. And you're joining us here to talk a little bit more about satellites and how satellites work, and especially one neat feature that's working over Alaska right now. What is that?
Well, there's a lot of weather satellites and a lot of instruments on these satellites, and there are new generations going up and new instruments. This includes something called the Day-Night Band, which is not a cover band at the local bar, but it's a new satellite that is very useful, especially here in Alaska, especially in the winter.
In the wintertime, yeah, that makes it a little bit hard to use some of the normal tools that we associate with weather satellite imagery.
Right. You know, one of the classic weather satellite instruments is just visible light. What would the human eye see if you were riding on a weather satellite yourself and looked down and it was black and white? You'd see the clouds reflecting the sunlight. And we've got an example from the Pacific Ocean. There's a geostationary satellite, and we can see that the eastern side of the image is in daylight. The western side, it's night over there, so you don't see anything because there's no sunlight over there. And visible imagery, it's very intuitive. You see the clouds just like you see them standing on the ground, but now you're a satellite seeing them from above. But the problem is, what about the night side of the planet? How do you track the storms? How do you know where the rain is, the snow, the weather, if you can't see the clouds? And that's why, just like a television can change from one channel to another, or radio can change stations, satellites can change the frequency of the electromagnetic spectrum that they're looking at. We can go to infrared instead of visible light. You know, it's heat energy. You can see heat, and we've got another satellite picture from the same time, same satellite, out over the Pacific Ocean. That's the infrared side, and we're seeing temperature there. And even at night, when there's no light, everything still has a temperature.
So we're sensing something with a thermometer instead of perhaps the visible side of that, is what you're saying?
That's right. On this depiction, colder features are lighter shades, warmer features are dark. And so clouds tend to be colder than the ground. Clouds are higher in the atmosphere, it's cooler. And so that very same image on the western or the left-hand side of the globe, now we can see the clouds there, even though it's nighttime, because we're seeing the temperatures. And one nice feature is that tropical storm there, just in the middle of the northern hemisphere there, hurricane or typhoon, depending on...
That's that swirly part that we see in the middle of the image?
There you go. You can even see the eye on it there, especially in the infrared image. So we've got two kinds of imagery there from the same satellite, different instruments, you know, different channels like on a television, visible and infrared. You know, it turns out there's no one magic tool. Each has its strengths, each has its flaws, weaknesses. The visible is nice, it's intuitive, it's easy to understand, but doesn't work at night. Infrared is nice, it works at night, you can see temperatures, but there is a catch. What if your clouds and the nearby bare ground or open water, what if those were about the same temperature?
Oh, that's going to be hard to figure out what's going on.
If you can only see temperature and you have two features that are the same temperature, they will look the same. You won't be able to tell. They're camouflaged. This happens, especially, it can happen around Alaska, especially over the ocean when you have low clouds that are the same temperature as the open water.
That happens quite a bit in Alaska.
We have an example. Now, this is from a different geostationary satellite. It's down over the Atlantic Ocean. Look in the South Atlantic. In infrared, we've highlighted in a yellow circle there. There's some patches of clouds, but it looks like there's a clear area in the middle of that image. That's the infrared look. But let's take a look at the visible channel, and we can see there's a stripe of clouds across the middle of that circle that is only visible in the visible. The trick here is that those are low clouds of about the same temperature as the surrounding ocean. So from an infrared point of view, where you're seeing temperature, the clouds in the water nearby are the same temperature, they look the same. It's only on the visible that you can see what stands out as the actual imagery. Two tools, each have their strengths and weaknesses. Can we combine them? That's where the day-night band comes in.
Okay.
It's a super sensitive visible sensor that can actually see by moonlight. It can even see the aurora.
Wow.
And in Alaska, we have long winter nights. We can use that day-night band. Here's an example from that storm that blew the Kullik drilling platform ashore near Kodiak Island in December back in 2012. This image is right near when that storm happened, and it's in the middle of the night in December.
But this looks like visible imagery.
Looks like daytime imagery. It's amazing. That sensor can take any little bit of moonlight and just make the most of it. We can see so much detail. Even in the northern part of the image there, you can see some aurora up there. The northern lights.
That's that band that goes across the Arctic slope?
You got it. That's the northern lights. We're seeing black and white image here, so you don't get the green or the purple colors there. But that is the aurora. There's another example of the day-night band, and this is from January of 2013. It's about 4 in the morning, and this is a snapshot from Weather Service software. And we can even see in the middle of the image, there's the lights of Fairbanks and North Pole over to Eielson Air Force Base. Anchorage and Matsu lights, city lights, are evident as well. We can see, even though it's 4 in the morning in January, there is no sunlight to be had, that just enough moonlight is available that this sensor can see that. So we're trying to solve that puzzle where visible light is good, but only during the daytime. IR is good at night, but you can't see the difference between clouds and ground sometime. The day-night band is an attempt to do the best of both with one tool. And it's brand new for Alaska here, and we're hoping to use it in the forecast process and help predict storms, weather patterns, to help get good forecasts for people.
Okay, another tool in the weather toolkit for meteorologists in Alaska and researchers worldwide. Thank you so much, Eric, for joining us today. And you can learn more about Dehne and the day-night band by going to the web address that you see on your screen. For Alaska Weather Facts, I'm meteorologist Dave Snider.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Today's sea ice analysis. Again, persistent southerly winds really decimating the sea ice here south of the Seward Peninsula, Bering Strait areas. You can see ice edge right up to St. Lawrence Island there, roughly, and north side of the island, getting areas open water. Same thing in Norton Sound here. Those southerly winds blowing the ice back across the sound, and it's really pulling it up even on the northern Seward Peninsula and the western Arctic coast there between Point Ley and Point Hope. And the forecast, we got at least 2 more storms rolling up over the next 2 or 3 days, and that's going to continue this trend of retreat. And for the coastal water forecast for the Panhandle, north to northwest winds 20 knots, seas running at about 9 to 11 feet, north 15, central and southern inside waters of the Panhandle, Lynn Canal, north 25, seas 5 feet. And then the Thursday outlook for Lynn Canal, north 25 continues, and winds picking up a little in Stevens Passage, north 20, but gale force gusts back in the forecast there, and just 10 knots for Clarence Strait, north 10 here on the central and north coast, northwest on the extreme north coast. And light winds also in store for Prince William Sound tomorrow with slight seas. But here in the we've got west 20, gust 35 for the eastern North Gulf Coast, 6-foot seas. Otherwise, west 20 winds all the way back to the Barren Islands without the gale force gusts. And west at 10 there for Kamishak Bay, northeast 15, south of the Forelands and Cook Inlet, north side just 10 knots. Outlook for Thursday, northeast 10 for Cook Inlet, west 10, Kamishak Bay, seas 2 feet, Barren Islands west 20. That's the same forecast for the western North Gulf Coast. Light winds continue in Prince William Sound with seas at 2 feet, northwest 15 for the eastern North Gulf Coast. And Kodiak Island, south to southwest 15 knots tomorrow, seas 3 to 6 feet. Excuse me, looking at Bristol Bay, southeast at 20. And then 40-knot winds coming in tomorrow afternoon for the Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula with seas building to 10 feet. South 30 knots on the Pacific side, and then from Castle Cape to Sitkinak, south winds 20 knots, seas at 9 feet. And let's see what's in store for Thursday. Good gales here, southeast 35 to 40 across the peninsula, southeast 25 in Bristol Bay, otherwise southwest of Sitkinak, about 20 knots, and south to southwest 15, a couple of light wind days coming up for Kodiak. And got storm warnings coming in to the central and pushing toward the eastern Aleutians tomorrow afternoon. On Alaska Island, south 45 knots, seas up to 20 feet. Adak 45 to 50 knots, south-southeasterlies. Front right through here and behind it, northwest 20 to 30. And for Thursday, westerlies at 25 from Shimia all the way in toward Adak, and then we'll call it 25 to 30 for Adak and Atka, and then back up to southwest 40, especially for Unalaska Island, falling back to 25 knots out of the west for Unmak Island. And for the southwest coast, good gales along the coast tomorrow, southeast 40 knots right up across St. Lawrence Island, including Norton Sound. Even stronger winds here for St. Matthew Island, southeast 45 and south 45 for the Pribilofs with 20 to 25 foot seas. Gales continue here along the coast on Thursday with 40-knot winds north of Nunivak Island to St. Lawrence Island. Gales continue in Norton Sound. Storm warnings out for the Pribilofs, southwest 50 for St. Paul, southeast 50, St. Matthew Island. Eastern Boulevard Sea Coast, far eastern coast, southeast 20, otherwise here the central coast and the east side 20 knots out of the south. Brisk wind advisories turn into high-end gales here from Cape Beaufort all the way down to Wales, 45 knots. And then for Thursday, not much change here. The strong gales extend all the way up to the west side here, and south to southeast 40 to 45 from there, all the way down to Wales, south 25, brisk wind advisory, central coast, southeast 15 to 20 on the east side. And for tonight again, high pressure controlling the weather here over the Panhandle, Gulf of Alaska, eastern interior, and this front really washing out here, just some snow showers, rain and snow showers, Bristol Bay, light rain showers, Kodiak Island and the south side of the Alaska Peninsula, maybe some light snow, still a little breezy up there on the northwest coast of St. Lawrence Island. Next storm driving northward, and that brings more snow and blowing snow to St. Lawrence Island and into the Yukon Delta coast on up to the northwest, and just some variable clouds here eastward from there, and then sunshine eastern interior to Cook Inlet, eastward to the Panhandle. Next day, another storm rolls up the Bering Sea here with winter storm warnings out, Yukon Delta coast, St. Lawrence Island, the Seward Peninsula areas.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.